How I do wood. Deliberately bad English there. I've got a lot of oaks that are dying. It's oak decline. A little bit of oak wilt going on. Mostly these mushrooms. You can see at the base of this oak. The tree gets old and rotty. These mushrooms start eating at the rotty stuff. And these mushrooms have a real unusual, I'll call it a root for using the improper term here. They're not really called roots, but they're thicker than normal. Normally their mushrooms have little ones that are almost invisible, but these are quite thick. And they start tunneling underneath the bark, these roots. And of course when the mushrooms die, there's a tunnel for the ants to use. And you cut these trees down, you'll see all kinds of sand inside the bark. And it's all that the ants have brought in to nest. And eventually that kills the tree, of course. That and the frost and the drought and worst tent beetles we had. We had 3 years in a row. One year they stripped the trees twice. They just barely regrew their leaves and got stripped again. So all that stress kills the trees. Anyways, so I cut them down. I'll slice up some rounds, start cutting them up in the woods here. I stack them like this so that air can flow through them real nicely. And you can see even though it's been raining, the wood's all dry underneath. The only thing that's really got wet is the ones on top. And of course the ones on top will dry in the sun the fastest too. So it kind of gives them a quick aging. When I cut this wood, it's almost a pinkish looking color. But after it's weathered a little bit, it kind of turns a salmon color. See, this wood's kind of halfway in between. Not as pink as it is when it's freshly split, but it's not quite as aged as I'd like to see it. This is a dead tree though, so it's pretty dry right off the bat. Of course I got it standing up because I cut, there's a leaner, happens to me a lot. So I cut them until they get like this, and they're a little bit dangerous to deal with. I'll come back to it at some point. Hopefully the weather will knock it over for me. Actually, this one won't knock over. It's too stable. I'll have to cut up about 3 slices and drop it again carefully. Anyway, so that's how I do it. Chop in the field real close to where I cut. So I'm not hauling these rounds around. I'm only hauling smaller wood around, trying to save my back. Other locations where I've been cutting. Pile here, pile down there starting to form. On the oaks you can use the bark as sort of a barometer of when they're ready to harvest or not. The maple tends to stick onto its bark a little firmer. In fact, this could be a maple here, I'm not sure. But this tree I determined wasn't dry enough to burn for this winter. It'll be good for next winter. So I've left it in pieces, semi-cut up, you know. Not going to bother hauling this in or splitting it yet. I'll deal with this next year. And then it'll be plenty dry. And I got a little stacked here. That's probably plenty dry. There's more stacked over there. So I got a lot to bring in. I stack them almost to chin height if they're stable enough. I stack them about as high as I can get away with. And I even saved the little chips for starting and for scrap. And the little chips even, so I never have to cut kindling. I just save my chips from splitting. And I've only got about a month left. Barely. After that it'll be too snowy and cold. So as the oaks die and dry out, they do drop their bark, and I encourage that. I'll leave some of them standing like this one, and I'll strip the bark off the bottom and leave it standing until I'm ready to cut it up. That lets it start drying out. Because usually the wood at the bottom of the tree is the wettest. When you get up to the top, they're usually drier. Well, I've seen the opposite of some of these trees that get suckered out real bad, where the upper branches will still have bark on them, where everything else has lost its bark, and hence will be a little bit moister. The wood will have a little bit more moisture. Once it's field weathered for a little bit, dry, and on a dry day, I'll bring it in here and stack it on this pile. I'll stack them real tight pack. Really, this has to be to the ceiling to get me through a winter. I'm going to be using a lot of electricity this year, I'm afraid. Then I've got a couple other piles too. This is my main pile. Then I put a pile of scrap. This is wood that I don't want to leave in the house. I want it to go directly into the burner usually. Be wood that's been infected by ants or just odd pieces, odd shapes. And then over here I stack greener wood. This is from last year. This can all go on the other pile now. This has been sitting here for a while. But any greener wood I'll stack over here. But I'm just not going to bring that stuff in because I'm running out of time. That's why I got that all stacked up in that one pile, half cut.